for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
If you're late on a coverage, they pass. If you're late on them, they all jump up and score. They all, if you switch a screen, they're great at attacking your bigs or the matchup that they're looking for. They're good. Mike's teams are so balanced offensively, always have been, always will be. They're always hard to deal with.
People have always thought like they're pretty close over there, like they've done some good things. Certainly nothing to this level, but I do think that we are in a better position in terms of because of our facilities and some of the momentum we've had to try to be able to sustain this a little bit.
They're our league's best team. The record shows it. The rankings show it. And, they did a great job. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them that they could perform that way in front of all these people because, there are some people that haven't watched women's basketball before that was in the building. I just hope it's not in vain. They got to get back in the gym and support this team.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, Tuesday night edition. Coming from the capital city, downtown Columbia, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, the Professor Tom Hayes, who did not get the memo that it was 70 degrees and beautiful today here in Columbia. He still thinks we're in the heart of winter time with that heavy jacket.
Who's had more sniffles this year than you?
I've had one.
Because you undressed before it's time to undress.
Excuse me? That's a little personal.
This is a dry fit shirt, by the way, so
it
wicks off the sweat.
All right, tomorrow is National Signing Day. We'll talk about basketball in a moment, but National Signing Day Light. It's going to be pretty calm for the most part. I mean, there'll be a little bit of drama here and there with the individuals left out there. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Mark it down as I see it at this particular time at 6:08:22 Eastern Standard Time.
Holding my breath.
In the year of our Lord, 2018. Right?
I'm ready.
Am I good so far?
I'm ready.
Well, I think Clemson will sign tomorrow Goodrich out of Missouri, the cornerback, Mario Goodrich. Feel pretty good about that one from talking with a source late this afternoon. He will do his thing at 8:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 out there on Channel 29.
Oh.
You know Channel 29?
I do.
In Kansas City?
Yes.
He is going there. They're not doing it at the school. They're bringing Muhammad to the mountain. And so he'll be over at that TV station. I'm sure it'll be streamed on their website.
Pretty sure.
So 8:30 Eastern Time. I expect him to sign with Clemson over Georgia and LSU. The only other one I think Clemson will get, and I don't know this by any means for fact, I just feel good about Clemson and Justin Ross. So I talked to his coach this afternoon. Very nice gentleman, Jamie DuBose. Just some things he said. And the fact that he talked to me, he also talked to David Hood. Typically, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but when you can communicate late with the people you're covering, that means there's interest there, that they want to be
tipping of the hand a little bit.
Yeah, they want your area to be informed, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of times when a guy's made a decision to go another direction, they don't communicate with you. The others left for Clemson, I don't see the I just got a text message here from Kev Cohen is making me laugh. The other
that's a unique thing.
The other folks on the Clemson board, I don't see falling Clemson's way. I don't think they're getting Gurridge. I don't think they're getting Surtain. No. And let's see, who am I forgetting? There's one more still left on the board. Anyway, that's what I see happening for Clemson tomorrow. South Carolina, I still think it's going to be a good day. South Carolina is closing strong. They finish with Wanham, of course, that's done. Sandage and Mincy. That would be a very strong finish for the Gamecocks.
Are you sure on Mincy?
Well, no, I mean, listen, nothing's ever for sure when it comes to recruiting, even when they have committed. But as far as Sandage goes, yeah, I've always felt good about Sandage. I have felt that with all the connections and the the in-person relationship that he has built with Muschamp and the in-person effort that Muschamp has made with him, all the times that he has visited South Carolina, I just can't see him going to Georgia. I just can't see him going to Georgia. And a chance, of course, to come in and be an immediate contributor at South Carolina. Mincy, I spoke with a source there today who I've been talking to who's, obviously knowledgeable. It's not a big school. Now, he's out of school again today with the flu.
Sucks.
Yeah. And yesterday, this source I talked to, one of their coaches, I'm not trying to hide anything here. It's not super sleuth. Talked to one of the coaches who's close to him, and he said, the father told him yesterday it was looking like South Carolina. Today, he talked to the father a little more open, a little more up in the air about things. So I would still roll my granite ball towards South Carolina on this one. Just a hunch, just playing a hunch there.
You got a feeling he's.
See, some recruiting people, they use crystal balls. I use a granite ball because mine's unbreakable.
I get the feeling
when I roll the granite ball, it's done.
I got a feeling this is the type of kid that if he was leaning Tennessee, he would tell you, well, South Carolina's looking really good right now. One of those contrarian type attitudes to try to throw you off the scent.
Well, the kid doesn't talk at all. I've talked to him once. That was after his official to South Carolina. Apparently my year of the Lord comment
did
raised some eyebrows.
Did not go over well.
No, it went over fine. I'm just hearing from some people who are like, huh? What she said?
That's what AD means. Year of our Lord.
Well, absolutely. That's what it means. I mean, that's what the world we live in. So anyway, that's kind of how I see it playing out for the Gamecocks. So the action will begin at 8:30 in the morning for Clemson with a decision by Goodrich, and then we'll move on. Mincy's at 10 o'clock. Sandage is in the afternoon. Gurridge is in the afternoon. I think Surtain, it really doesn't matter. Who's that last one I'm thinking about for Clemson?
I was trying to figure it out. I
can look real quick.
I can't tell you why. I'm embarrassed to tell you why I can't find it.
Why you're embarrassed?
I'm embarrassed for us to tell you why I can't find it.
Why can't you find it?
Because I tried to go to our website and our website's down.
Ouch.
Sorry.
Trayvon Flowers. Yeah, Trayvon Flowers. There's actually two more. Back up here. Trayvon Flowers. I'm pretty strong on him going to Tennessee. Feel like he's going to pick Tennessee. And then there's Dax Holyfield.
That's the other one.
Yeah, Dax Holyfield. We told you what his dad told us yesterday. That kind of stirred a few people up, what his dad had to say.
About Bud Foster?
Yeah.
I don't, again, I said that yesterday. It seems odd.
Yeah.
Seems like an odd characterization.
Now Matt Connolly.
I got the feeling that comment was because he liked the personality. That it had nothing to do with talent as a defensive coordinator. That's how I took the comment.
Well, I think the dad, first of all, I think the dad's is a former football player. He's the kid's father. He's also his basketball coach. I got a feeling he's got some influence over the kid when it comes to this sort of stuff, I think, but I can't say for certainty. But he's I've met the dad before. He's a big fellow, and I think he has a strong personality there. And I think he probably taken back a little bit by the fact that Clemson, was recruiting the kid, then they dropped him. And now here at the 11th hour, they've come back, full speed to try to get him. Matt Connolly was Matt Connolly from the state went to Shelby and talked to Holyfield yesterday. Has a story in his paper today. I guess it was in there, last night. Yeah. And Holyfield told him that Dabo's been FaceTiming him pretty regularly, and it's really a tough thing for him now because Clemson was his favorite school, and that's where he would have gone had they stuck with him.
There's no rules against FaceTiming, even though with the contact the way it is?
No, you can have social media, you can text, you can call during this dead period. Just can't be there in person.
Gotcha.
So I still think he's going to Virginia Tech. I think it's too little too late for Clemson on that one.
How can you leave Stanford on the table like that?
Just too far away. I think that's the thing there. I think the distance. I think if Stanford were like in Tennessee, he'd go to Stanford.
It's a big school to turn down.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. Basketball coming up tonight. We'll talk about it.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Love to hear from you tonight. 800-956-7266. You recruit nuts out there. Time for you to rise and be heard from. Your thoughts on how things are going to finish up for your respective teams. South Carolina seems to be charging down the track. And if they finish with the 2 signees tomorrow to go along with Wanham, big finish for the Gamecocks.
That's huge for them.
And Clemson still going to finish up extremely well if they sign the 2 that I mentioned. Now, the Tigers, they've had a few swings and misses here down the stretch on some guys. And you know, I think the feeling at Clemson has been because they've been so successful that just by merely showing up and making an offer and getting you on campus, they're going to beat out other established teams. I think they maybe are learning here this particular signing period. That's not always going to be the case. I mean, they felt pretty good about Leon O'Neal out in Texas, but then Texas A&M came back in and they turned him back to the Aggies, so they did not get him. They brought in Surtain and hoped to swing him. Not going to be the case there. Same thing with Gurridge. But, I mean, look, they still have had a great year. They signed a very impressive class in December. If they can add Ross in particular to the class, that's another highly regarded player. And the other kid is also, look, if you're offered by Clemson, that tells me you're pretty you're talented and you're highly coveted, and you can play for a lot of different schools. So get those 2 to add to what they signed early. And you'd have a pretty good class at Clemson.
I have a thought on each. Clemson, it shows me where they recognize their biggest weaknesses with the fact that they went so secondary heavy in the second signing period. A lot of that had to do with, losing Ryan Carter. I know that Fields coming back is big, but I think they realized that their depth was tested in the secondary last year heavily. So they not felt the need to try and build that back up and ensure that back up. And so much about what South Carolina has tried to do over at least not only this year, but also even dating back to last year, is shore up the trenches. Eric Wolford wants to completely remake that offensive line. He continues that with Dylan Wanham. And you need to get defensive playmakers on the line of scrimmage. And I think that if you can get Mincy, if you can get Rick Sandage, that goes very, very nicely with what you had in the early signing period. This could make a very, very different looking defensive line for South Carolina next year and in the years to come if they can get both those guys.
Well, let's take a look. Let's take a quick look at the classes.
The Clemson's best recruiting may have been something maybe they had a little something to do with it or nothing, but having those veteran defensive linemen come back.
Well, that buys you another year.
That buys you another year.
That's probably a better recruiting job than anybody. Yeah.
I was talking to a buddy of mine last night who's an agent and knowledgeable in the ways of agent things and player comings and goings. And I said, what's the deal? Why? See, he said those 3 guys, Bryant, Wilkins,
Farrell.
Mm-hmm. In the agent world, agents talking to agents and talking to NFL people, all first-round picks.
Of course.
All first-round picks. And I said, well, if you're a first-round pick, why in the world would you go back to college? Why would you walk away from a $15 million payday?
I know coaches who have coached in this in college who would have told them to go. It wouldn't have let them come back.
Right. And, I'm not going to share a lot of the stuff that he told me. It was private and off the record. But, I mean, he said agents in his world, they were as amazed as anybody over that turn of events there. But it's good fortune for Clemson. Case you have forgotten. Let's just run over the signing classes for Carolina and Clemson very quickly and to remind you of what the 2 have done to this point. So the Gamecocks go into tomorrow with defensive backs R.J. Roderick, Jonathan Gibson, Israel Mukwamu, and J.C. Horn. We take Bryce Thompson off the list, at least for now. Hopefully for him and for South Carolina, it will work out because that guy, I'm telling you, He is a talent.
Mm.
He is an absolute. He drips talent.
Well, he's got till April 1 to get his stuff together.
Yeah. Well, even after that, he doesn't have to sign a letter.
Right.
If it takes longer
Could be
and
a
South
granted
Carolina is where he wants to go, he can just enroll in school and go on scholarship.
Yeah.
As long as they have space. All right. Defensive end, Kingsley Inagbar. Defensive lineman, Jabari Ellis, Jesus Gibbs, Tyreek Johnson. Linebackers, Ernest Jones, Rosendo Lewis. And I think he's got star written all over him. Offensive lineman, Hank Manos, Maxwell Ayama, Wyatt Campbell, Jovan Gwynn, and Dylan Wanham. And I think they are progressively under Wolford now and going into his third year, progressively upgrading their talent level on the offensive line.
And also, just to add to what you said before about, we were talking about Ronnie Jameson over the last couple of days. It looks like he is at least off the list for South Carolina as well because of potential academic issues.
Yeah. Quarterback to Kerryon Joyner, running backs Levante Valentine, Deshaun Fenwick, and receivers Darius Rush, Tyquan Johnson, and Josh Vance.
That's the guy I really like.
Yeah.
I like that guy.
So that puts the Gamecocks at 21. They've got room. If they sign all three, it puts them at 24, which leaves them with one. I don't know if they'll spend it or hold that scholarship for a walk-on.
Or Thompson.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens there. As far as Clemson's class, 15 already signed and enrolled. I mean, that's nice and neat. If you can get them all done, signed, and enrolled, you got to like that. But they only have one defensive back, so you can see why they're trying to close with another defensive back or two. Kyler McMichael's a defensive back. Defensive ends, Xavier Thomas, Justin Maskell, KJ Henry. Defensive lineman, Josh Belk, Darnell Jeffries. Linebackers, Mike Jones, Jake Venables. Offensive lineman, Jordan McFadden and Jackson Carman. Place kicker, BT Potter. Quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Running back, Lynn J. Dixon. Tight end, Braden Galloway. And receiver, Darion Kendrick. So the Tigers have a little bit of everything, just not big numbers spread across the board. Now, next year
they didn't lose a lot this year, though. You have to keep in mind.
Exactly. Well. And next year they'll be able to go back to a full class of 25. Now, South Carolina, see my numbers. I've been going over and over the roster, and I've got the Gamecocks. If you count the 21 commitments that I have down for them, is that 21, right? Yeah.
Yes.
With the returning players on scholarship that I know of, unless I've got somebody on here, and I can never swear at this point to 100% certainty. I've got him with 84. I've got him with a total of 84.
Remember to pull Gujar off?
Yeah, I took Gujar off.
Okay.
Yeah, I took Gujar off. I'll have to.
That's the one that I thought of exactly the same.
Now, this includes some people who are on who are walk-ons who got scholarships who obviously
that's year to year.
They can go back to a walk-on situation if they have to make room.
They all work itself out.
It does. I'm just looking at my numbers, so I've got 84 with South Carolina. As far as Clemson goes, again, we mentioned that the Tigers have a huge junior class, 22 juniors who'll be seniors at this particular point in time. And so they've got they're in fine shape as far as their numbers go. They'll have plenty of room to work in their signing class, so no big sweat there.
Especially because they didn't have a lot necessarily coming in.
Of course, keep in mind now, there's supposed to be, according to David Hood, a couple of more guys looking to transfer. You had the tight end yesterday, and I should actually take him off of my list, so that would actually
free up one more spot.
Free up another spot. So anyway, there's room there for the Tigers, but their next class will be almost a full class, as they've got at this point at least 22 seniors for next year.
The thing I don't understand about Clemson is that they played a ton of guys last year, even in spots that weren't necessarily like mop-up roles. So that's kind of where I'm wondering kind of where the transfers come from. I mean, if you couldn't get time with as many players as they played, that's probably why a lot of those guys are maybe looking for other pastures to graze in.
Well, I mean, it just shows you that Clemson has recruited over some of the earlier talent that they brought in. I mean, some of the guys that are leaving were highly recruited guys that you thought were going to be terrific players, but Clemson got better players ahead of them, obviously, and it pushed them down the line. All right, we'll hit a break. We will get some phone calls here after the break, 800-956-7266. We'll be right back. Checking my numbers for Clemson with the incoming class right now of 15 and deleting the deletions. I've got them at 80 with the 15 coming in. So they got plenty of room to maneuver, maybe add some walk-ons.
They got room for you.
Yeah, I told you, nose guard. They could put me in there and I'd bump Christian Wilkins to the side.
Wow.
Handle the middle of that defensive line. Actually, I think I'd be a weak side linebacker. I like to play up. I don't like to play with my hand in the dirt.
There's one thing about that sentence, right?
What's that?
We
What he said.
All right, 800-956-7266.
What position should I play, Coach? Prone.
Left out.
Let's go to the phones here. We're going to talk about South Carolina, Arkansas coming up. JR in Irmo. Good evening, sir. Welcome in. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I actually had a question and a comment.
Yeah.
The question, I heard you mention a kid, Darion Kendricks. Where is he from? What high school?
South Point.
South Point. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this name sounds familiar. Okay, and the comment was about the Super Bowl, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what you guys thought about the officiating. There's a lot of people talking about that last play, about maybe Gronk being held up at the line or a receiver that was held up at the line. I didn't quite see that, but I did see down the field, if you follow Gronk down the field, before he actually gets to the end zone to attempt to catch that ball, there was a defender that he almost down, but there was no flag thrown. And you could see he clearly almost pushed the guy on the ground.
One thing I liked about the officiating, I didn't think it was a poorly officiated game at all, though I've also seen video that said that on the throwback to Foles, that should have been a penalty because it was an illegal formation,
right,
that the outside receiver should have been up on the line, and he wasn't. But I liked that they let him play. I thought they let him play and let the guys make some plays. Yeah, there was some holding in the secondary, and they made those calls. I thought the game had a good flow and a good pace, and the officials did a nice job of kind of staying out of the way.
On the Foles play, the wide receiver on that side of the field did ask the line judge, or at least clarify with the line judge, to tell him that he was meaning to be on the line, even though it didn't look like whether it was an optical illusion or just the way the camera angle looked. But it didn't look like he was on the line. He had meant to be on the line. So at least from that perspective, that play from their perspective was legal. As far as the Hail Mary pass, I mean, it almost has to be absolutely egregious for something to be called on one of those. Mm-hmm. Like, it has to be intentional. Like, there has to be blood drawn. Like, that's like how bad it has to be. Or something exactly. Like that. That's the only time they call anything on any of those. I had no problem with that.
All right, so thank you very much for your phone call, 800-956-7266. Our phone number, if you want to jump on board. Let me update a couple of notes of interest. The NFL today released the players invited to Combine Feb 27 through March 5 in Indianapolis. From USC, tight end Hayden Hurst, cornerback Jamarcus King, linebacker Sky Moore, defensive tackle Taylor Stallworth. From Clemson, receiver Deion Kane, offensive lineman Taylor Hearn, receiver Ray McLeod, safety Van Smith, and linebacker Dorian O'Daniel. From South Carolina State, linebacker Darius Leonard, ex-Citadel All-American Dee Delaney has been invited. West Ashley product Brett Toth has also been invited to the Combine. You see anybody else?
Not that I know of. I think people were making some comments about the guys who weren't invited. I know a lot of Clemson fans wanted Ryan Carter. People from South Carolina were kind of up in arms that Chris Lamons, DJ Smith, among those, Dante Sawyer didn't get involved. This is kind of where I come at with the Combine. The Combine is literally a guess from the folks who evaluate the National Football League. There's only 224 draft picks, and of course, so over many, slots that happen as a result of undrafted free agents. Just because you don't go to the Combine doesn't mean you can't have a good pro day and get a look from an NFL team. It's just their best guess at where players might be at right now.
And sometimes you're not invited to the combine. You end up in the Super Bowl with an Eagles jersey on and catch a touchdown pass.
And sometimes you don't want to go to the combine because guess what happens at the combine? Everybody gets put, like that underwear, and they all get put inside that microscope. Sometimes it's better to have a good pro day because you can control more about your pro day.
True. I am surprised DJ Smith in particular didn't get invited. I thought he had an excellent year at South Carolina. I think he is I think he's a pro prospect at safety. He's a hard hitter, comes up well on the run, has showed good coverage skills as well. He's a tough guy. You think he needs to be bigger?
Bigger.
Yeah. I'm still surprised that he did not get the invite.
More upper body, more height.
Now, today, ESPN announced the kickoff time for the SEC spring games.
We're already there.
USC's spring game, March 31st, which we already knew about, will kick off at noon. We'll lead the parade of exciting spring action
on Final Four Saturday.
Yeah, that's Final Four Saturday. So good it leads the parade.
Yes. Well, last Final Four Saturday, the Gamecocks had their spring game, and then the Gamecocks played a basketball game that night. Maybe Clemson will be in the Final Four this time around.
Who knows?
Yeah. Let's see what else we got for you here.
When's their spring game? Did we find that out yet?
I don't know. We've seen a date on that. Look it up.
I'm looking at
ACC preseason baseball poll by the coaches. Florida State is picked number 1 overall to win the championship. North Carolina 2. Wake Forest got the other first place vote. 10 for Florida State, 3 for North Carolina, 1 for Wake. In the Atlantic Division, Florida State's number 1, Louisville number 2, Clemson 3, NC State 4, and Wake Forest 5. That's silly. So Clemson finishes 2 spots ahead of Wake Forest, but didn't get a vote for the overall championship.
April 14th, Clemson spring game. No time set.
Boston College 6 and Notre Dame 7. Coastal Division, North Carolina 1, Virginia 2, Duke 3, Miami 4, Georgia Tech 5, then Virginia Tech and Pitt rounded out. Fletcher McGee from Wofford's been named one of 10 finalists for the Jerry West Award, announced by the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. This goes annually to the top shooting guard in Division I men's college basketball, and who could argue with that selection? And the Southern Conference Player of the Week is Citadel forward Zane Nadawi. He had a big week, averaging 22 points, 8.5 rebounds. The Citadel beat Wofford and Furman last week. So there you go with some news notes. USC women took it on the chin last night. We left here. They were in pretty good shape with Mississippi State. Then the second half, it really turned against them.
No, they weren't. Because I told you when I walked out of here, if you're shooting 50% and the other team's shooting 28% and you only have a 5-point lead, there's a problem.
They got out of their rhythm in the second quarter. They had foul trouble, and kind of the similar situation developed in the fourth quarter. They only scored 9 points in the fourth. It was kind of rough near the end for them, and it's an unfortunate thing for them because they've now lost 2 in a row. And you kind of have to find yourself now in this SEC where you are looking up at the defending runners-up. And right now, Mississippi State can't have anything go wrong for them.
I got to say that I thought, listening to her comments after the game, that Dawn Staley knew this was going to happen.
Oh, of course.
She's beaten Mississippi State 11 in a row, and they were out for blood last night.
No doubt.
And they were more physical than South Carolina.
That was a buzzsaw last night.
So, I mean, which way are the USC women going to go from here now? They've lost to Tennessee. They've lost to Mississippi State. They lost to Tennessee at home. They lost to Mississippi State. Lost to Connecticut at home. High-profile losses for them. Can they be a factor nationally when they get to the postseason again?
Yes.
They can. They'll be in position to make the postseason and be in a good spot to be in the postseason because there's still a staunch divide from the haves and the have-nots in women's college basketball. And South Carolina is still amongst the haves. They're just not as highly thought of or highly touted as they were last year amongst the haves.
I like a team that's been bloodied before they get to the postseason because they know they can come out on the other side. You know, if you Mississippi State, as soon as those wins start to pile up and there's a 0 in the loss column, then that noose starts to tighten.
Start to think about that 0 a lot more than you think about the 23 you've won.
Okay, we'll hit a break and we'll come back with some recruiting for you. We'll also be hearing from Clemson coach Brad Brownell here on Sports Talk.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
South Carolina on the road tonight again, playing at Arkansas. The Gamecocks were just out in the Southwest, playing at Texas A&M. They've gone to Arkansas, where they are not exactly having the kind of year that they wanted to have under Mike Anderson. 15-8, like the Gamecocks, 4-6 in the SEC. So these two teams in that backup there at 4-6, you can go anywhere from like 5th place to 12th place in that group. So it's an important game for both of these teams as they try to get some momentum going for the second half of their league schedule, guys. The Gamecocks kind of bumbling here going into the second half of the SEC.
Well, Arkansas is doing it in a different way than they've usually done it. Usually they hang their hat on their defense, but instead they're one of the top 25 scoring offenses in the country with an adjusted offense of about 116.9 per KenPom. Their adjusted defense is 126th in the country. So it's something that is a different type of formula for Mike Anderson's squad. But the one thing you know about them is in their DNA, and that will press you for 40 minutes up and down the floor. And that is something that is a matchup nightmare for South Carolina and its young guards.
Well, you know, it's one of the things that this happens to Arkansas this year is the fact that what you said, because their defense has failed a lot of times.
They've had to score a lot.
People have been scoring on them.
Yeah.
They played a lot of games in the 90s, and 90 points or more. South Carolina has to protect the ball and be strong with it. If I'm South Carolina, I'm making this a foul line game. I'm going to barrel to the hoop if you're going to press me and make you foul me. And you have to watch their shot blocker on the end of the press because he will swat away a lot of shots.
Well, I mean, this could be, if the Gamecocks can't keep their turnovers down, it could be ugly. You mentioned Arkansas likes to score a lot, 83 points. They do give up 77 per game. Now, the Gamecocks only average 67. So, I'm sorry, the Gamecocks average 70. They give up 67.
Right.
So, South Carolina would be challenged just to make that 77 number. Plus, Arkansas can shoot it. They're at 49% from the field. The Gamecocks are just under 40% as a team. That's not good. Where South Carolina can do some damages on the boards. Arkansas is not a great rebounding team. They have a negative rebounding margin, while the Gamecocks are plus 5.1. But they are Arkansas. They are 11-1 at home.
It's a tough place to play. This is far from a gimme. But the problem with South Carolina is, and they're not allowed to look ahead, but we are. There aren't very many gimmies left on the schedule, if any. I don't know if there is a game that you could consider South Carolina as an absolute favorite in, other than maybe home Georgia, home LSU, the home Florida, obviously because you beat them, but at the same time,
but they won't be favored.
They're not as good as they're not playing as well as they were going into that Florida game.
And of course, depending on the condition and how far he can go with Holden, this is the healthiest they're going to get.
Right.
That's the key point.
Nobody else is walking through that door.
Now, the other thing is you have to pick your spots, and it's hard to figure it out, Will, but you can throw over the top of that press. But a lot of people are scared to do that. Sometimes you got to do it against the Arkansas press.
Well, the problem is a lot of teams aren't conditioned to do that. You see, if you try to get into a running game with them,
don't get into a running game.
That's the issue, is that people try to run with them, and that's something that gets you sucked in, and that's how you lose, and that's how you end up getting a 10-0 run going back the other way.
That's why one of the successes you've seen in Virginia, because Virginia will slow it down on you, and then when you least expect it, we're going to press it, and they throw over the top of it.
The key to getting through their press is you have to get the ball to the middle, because they'll try to do everything to force you to the sideline or to the baseline to trap you. If you can get the ball in the middle and break the press straight up the middle of the floor, that's how you beat Arkansas.
Eliminate the phantom defender, i.e. the out of bounds line.
Ask me how I know, by the way. Ask me how I know.
Because you pressed.
No, because I watched Mike Anderson's defenses for way too many years up at the other Columbia.
All right, let me give you the recruiting report for tonight. Of course, we've talked about a bunch of this stuff at the beginning of the show, but for some notes from today, receiver Justin Ross of Phoenix City, Alabama, talked with his coach this afternoon. He's down to Clemson, Alabama, Auburn. Coach feels he's made his decision. He said, honestly, I think he knows. He's just trying to keep everyone on the outside. This is Coach Jamie Dubose. He said, I think he's known for a while. See, to me, that kind of points towards Clemson a little bit. He went and visited Clemson in November. Unless he has always felt Alabama throughout the whole process, even before he went to Clemson.
Hard to look at those guys and tell them no.
It is indeed. But here's what he told me, that, first of all, he praised Jeff Scott and Todd Bates for their recruiting efforts. He said it's the best he's ever seen in 25 years of coaching. But he also said that he wants to have a great career like he had in high school. He wants to be around people he's comfortable with. He continued to hit on the concept of being comfortable, in a surrounding that he really likes. And I don't know. To me, I think it rings Clemson. He announces at 1:15 on ESPN2. Plans to have a baseball cap for each school at the ready. He's also cut a video for his mom. So that tells you he's made his decision. His mom is military. That will not be shown on TV. It will be aired at the school and also on Twitter. Let's see here. Mincy, just checking on Mincy a few moments ago with a coach there, another contact. Mincy, as I mentioned, home with the flu. According to my contact, who I just was messaging with here, he loves both schools. Don't really know who he's picking, is what one of my contacts there is telling me. So still up in the air with Mincy. Maybe it was South Carolina looking good yesterday, as we said earlier from talking with coaches, a little bit more up in the air today. So I'm sure both coaches are trying to get in touch with him. But, you know, when you're sick and the kid has been home with the flu, he might not be talking to any coaches now. He maybe just wants to be left alone so he can get over the flu bug that he has or whatever it is that's got him down.
You should have left us alone when you had the flu. I'm just kidding.
I never had the flu. I just had a very bad cold, a Category 7, but I'm over it now.
I thought it was the flu.
No, it was not the flu. I never had any muscle aches. I never had any
fever.
No fever. No, I just had just a head cold.
Got it.
May I continue?
Sure.
Former Fort Dorchester defensive lineman James Middleton, 6'6", 295. You can pretty much put him in the USC 2019 class. Not officially a public commitment, but he told me he plans to sign in December with the Gamecocks after he spends this year at Jones County Junior College in Mississippi. He enrolled there in early January. He's doing the same thing Javon Kinlaw did.
Okay.
Get in junior college early, get your semesters behind you, get your grades ready to go, and enroll at South Carolina next January. Now, the other thing with him is he suffered a major leg injury in the Somerville game last season, last game of the regular season. Broke his leg in two places, fibula and tibia. Tibia. Fibula and tibia. He went in as an offensive lineman, was making a block on the goal line, got rolled on, and broke his leg in two places. Thought his career might be over. South Carolina stayed on him recruiting-wise. He met with the Gamecocks, came in for a visit at South Carolina back on the 9th. He met with Will Muschamp, Lance Thompson. They all met with the family, determined that this was the best route for him so he could rehab the leg and also get the academics together. So if everything continues well, health-wise, school-wise, he'll be a Gamecock. 50 tackles, 9 tackles for loss last season, 2 sacks. Also, keep an eye on Fort Dorchester receiver Justin Williams, a Shrine Bowler. He is trying to decide his course of action. His coach, Steve LaPrade, told us that he's looking at junior college or a prep school. South Carolina and Virginia Tech have been the 2 schools involved with him, and he really wants to go to South Carolina, so they're actively working with him to get him placed at one of those 2 locations. And then, again, the hope is that he gets everything done, and he only loses a year of eligibility. A very special talent, 47 receptions, 866 yards, 14 touchdowns last season. For him, he also is a very good basketball player, though he laid off basketball this season.
Now, who was his quarterback at Fort Dorchester?
The Carry-On Joiner. Yeah, it's obvious.
Wow.
Got a little bit more. Give it to you after the break. Tell me when. All right, here we go.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Hey, a good offensive start for the most part for USC out at Arkansas. The Gamecocks have hit their first 3 shots, yet they trail 7-6 about 3 minutes in. They have turned it over a couple of times. That's given Arkansas a couple of points here early on. The Gamecocks have 4 from Minaya, who's back in the lineup, and Gravitt has the other 2 for the Gamecocks. Gafford has 5 for Arkansas. So the Gamecocks going to have to deal with that pressure and see if they can make some shots when they get those opportunities.
It's odd because, when I heard Frank Martin say what he said about Mike Anderson's offense, I almost choked on my saliva because of how much I know that team struggles with running half-court offense. But again, I think a lot of this goes down to what we said earlier, is a lot of teams are trying to get into track meets with them, and that's how they're getting a lot of their baskets. If you force Arkansas to play half-court offense and you make your shots and take your good opportunities and also force them to play half-court defense, that's how you beat them.
And because they never get into the rhythm they want to. It's that Nolan Richardson rhythm, 40 minutes of hell. That's what the
way they used to practice, they didn't used to run any, skull session. They didn't do any walkthroughs. All they would do was play long games with like 6-on-6. And that's how they would that's how they would basically run their practices. They'd run those guys to death.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Tennessee and Kentucky playing at Rupp Arena. Tennessee up early there, 4-1. Other games in the SEC tonight, there are 2 more. Alabama's at Mississippi State. And then the finale tonight, Mizzou at Ole Miss. And in the ACC tonight on this Tuesday, we've got 1 game. It's Boston College at Notre Dame. Tomorrow, Virginia at Florida State. Wake Forest at Miami, NC State at Virginia Tech, and then Thursday, Pitt at Clemson, Georgia Tech at Louisville, and we get to it. This is the one thing that I always say the state of North Carolina has that's better than the state of South Carolina. It's the only thing. Nothing else compares. We're so much superior. But it's that Duke, North Carolina basketball rivalry, and they play round 1 in Chapel Hill tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. You ever been to a Duke, North Carolina game?
I have not.
Well, you should go to one. I can get you in. I went to one at Durham. I went to one at Cameron. Unfortunately, it was the year that North Carolina won the national championship, and they beat Duke soundly that night. So the Fizz kind of went out of the game with about 7 or 8 minutes to go because North Carolina was firmly in control. But it is some setting. Of course, at Duke games at Cameron, the student body comes rushing in early to grab their seats, but it's just a whole nother level when North Carolina is the opponent. Same thing in Chapel Hill. I do love watching those two go at it. And again, you got 2 teams that are nationally ranked. Maybe North Carolina has struggled a bit of late. And Duke is coming off an embarrassing loss to St. John. So, both will be trying to save a little face here when they meet up tomorrow night or Thursday night.
I want to hold you to that for the return engagement in Durham on March the 3rd, because I think Clemson's on the road and I think South Carolina's on the road.
Well, one of the things that happens.
What day of the week is that? That's a Saturday.
You have the
March 3rd.
You have almost the perfect.
Well, give me $150 and I can get you
with those 2 teams, because not only are they tremendously talented and win championships, but they're only 8 or 9 miles apart.
6 miles.
It'll come out of your betting.
6 mile ride. 6 mile ride down. What is that? US 5? What is it? 15? 50? No, it's something with a 5. I've always, to me, hopping on that bus, whether you're going from Chapel Hill to Durham or the other way around on the day of that game, that's got to be something kind of special, especially if the fans know you're coming. They know the bus is coming. They're out there waiting on you on the highway. It's pretty cool.
Big state school versus snotty private school.
All right, let me finish recruiting because I had a few more notes to get to. Defensive back Trayvon Flowers of Tucker, Georgia. Talked to him last night, working on his decision. Clemson, Tennessee, Kentucky. Plans to make it tonight. Plans to make his decision today, then announce it tomorrow at 9:30. That's when the boys at Tucker will be signing, so you can expect Wanham to be signing around that time. And again, he talked with Clemson safeties coach Mickey Kahn and Tennessee head coach Jeremy Pruitt. Pruitt's giving him a lot of attention, and I think he's going to go with Tennessee, to be honest with you. He's also a baseball player. Let's see if anything else here. Did that. I think we did that. USC and Clemson target linebacker Kalen DeLoach of Savannah was offered by Alabama. Running back DJ Twitty of Chapman, who's got a preferred walk-on offer from USC, now has East Tennessee and Coastal Carolina offers, and he's considering one of those along with the walk-on offer from USC. Former York and Dillon quarterback Braden Hawkins committed to UTEP. So there we go. That's what we got for you right now. We will be covering everything, of course, overnight, looking at anything that's breaking. We'll put that on our website if it's of note, or on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Be up early tomorrow morning, of course, waiting for those first LOIs to roll in. Not going to be that many. I guess the first one to be looking for would be at Clemson with Mario Goodrich, with him signing at 8:30 Eastern time. If he gets that done, or announcing at 8:30 Eastern time, I guess he'll go back to the school maybe and sign.
That's
so it might be a little
early.
bit later than that to get the LOI in.
7:30 a.m. Central. He's an early riser.
Yeah, I guess so.
Or maybe he just has the tweet already.
Well, they probably have a
probably
have a morning show on that station, maybe, and
Gotcha.
they want to have him on there.
Gotcha.
Do you know that station at all?
It's the CW affiliate for Kansas City.
And they have a sister station as well, right?
Yeah.
So they're
the
putting
sister
it,
station's the bigger one, KMBC.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll be watching all that. So feel free to follow along on our website, sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. All right, Arkansas up on the Gamecocks 9-8. Both teams shooting 50% from the floor at this point. Again, the key stat here to keep an eye on, turnovers. The Gamecocks have 3 in the first 5 minutes.
It's something that is going to be, if you're looking at this game, assist to turnover ratio is the biggest thing. If you have more turnovers than you have assists, and I know that I feel like I've been banging the assist drum over the last couple of weeks.
You're right.
But it's such a key stat, at least in this particular game with this matchup.
And I think with Arkansas, that matchup, if you can get away with 12 turnovers in the game, you're all to the good.
That's definitely lucky.
Exactly. You're all to the
Well, we
good.
can say this. The Gamecocks are definitely off to a better start than what they had at Texas A&M.
It wouldn't have taken much.
Because they're now up 14-9. They're on a 6-0 run over the last 30 seconds. They've made 5 of their first 8. How did they start at Texas A&M?
They were 1 for their first 14.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
20-5.
How
was at
one day
point.
you don't have it, and then a couple of days later you just might have found it.
Frank Martin said that after the game, he said that anything we would have done wouldn't have compared. I'm saying you shot 1 for your first 14. Like you were deathly awful in that start.
How many of those were 3-pointers from the? How many of those were long shots? I mean, did they try to work it inside?
They did. They definitely did. It wasn't just them chucking up threes.
I haven't gone back. The game was such a blowout. I had no interest in going back and looking at it, so I don't know the details.
It wasn't all threes.
I thought his comment was directed toward A&M.
Yes,
Corn,
yes.
I'm telling you, A&M is in panic mode, and those guys came out like you released the hounds, and they jumped all over South Carolina, and they had no answer.
Well, Gamecocks are playing well. 16-11 now. They have hit their last 3. They're up to 67% shooting. They're playing much better. So we'll see if they can keep it going there in Arkansas. That's the thing. A team starts going bad, and you sort of say, okay, they're just going to have a rotten end to their season and be one and done in their tournament and all that kind of stuff. Let's just say they go here into Arkansas and they can pull out the win. And they got Florida coming in on Saturday. Now, all of a sudden, everybody's rejuvenated. You got a chance to get back to 500 in the league. If you can knock off Florida and sweep the season series with the Gators, I mean, that just gives you a whole different view heading down the stretch.
That 10 next to their number on the loss column side is ugly enough. You got to get more of those type of victories. You got to get one of those games against Auburn. You cannot lose any games that you shouldn't lose at this point.
All right, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. We'll be right back.
I'm not saying you got to
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
USC still hanging on to the lead, and the shooting percentage now up to 70%. 7 of 10 from the floor. USC up 19-15, 12:59 to play in the first half. Gamecocks moving the ball around, keeping the turnovers to this point to a minimum, still at 3. So that's a good start from that standpoint. And in terms of assists, they've got already 5 assists on their 7 baskets. Minaya leading the way with 7. So you got to like the start the Gamecocks have in this one through the first 7 minutes.
And just aesthetically, from not only what we've watched, but what the numbers tell you, they are, like you said, moving the ball. They're reversing it. They're finding the open man, something they didn't do in their last 3 years.
Yeah, and of course, Holden hit that 3 at the top of the key. But I will tell you this, Arkansas is doing the things that South Carolina should do. Arkansas is literally throwing their bodies underneath the basket and getting whistles. You got to do that. South Carolina's been shooting from the outside, but they have to get some periods where they can drive to the hoop and get to the foul line.
Yeah, now, just watching here, you can see where having Holden on the floor helps with their ball handling and their ball movement. Beatty is running some at the points, and the Gamecocks are just they're moving it well. They're playing good offense. And interesting, unless he is let me just double check here. Yeah, to this point in the ball game, and Frank Martin's already gone deep in his bench. Myers has not made an appearance in the game.
That is very odd.
I don't know if there's something wrong with him, sickness, injury, whatever the case may be. Maybe he's just he hasn't been playing all that well of late. And it's just a little bit concerned about putting him in there.
They did say Wes had a little bit of flu going into the A&M contest, but I don't know. They said he was good enough to play in the A&M game, so he still played in that contest, but I think he could be getting off some of the ill effects of that.
All right, 800-956-7266 is the phone number if you'd like to join us here on the program. We got room and time for your phone calls. Somebody is starting to tout Jake Bentley for the Heisman in 2018.
Barrett Sallee of CBS Sports does a podcast, and he said if and when his name gets on the odds boards for Heisman hopefuls to possibly, if you're looking for a long shot to bet, to possibly go there with Bentley. He cites South Carolina's schedule next year, the fact that they get Georgia at home, and the fact that he did not progress necessarily to the level that people thought he would. He's looking for a much bigger jump, not only with the additions that they made. Werner obviously part of that, and obviously the new offensive coordinator, Brian McClendon. A lot of reasons, although, again, I think it's all based on things we haven't seen. It's a hope. I wouldn't say it's anything concrete we've seen from Bentley to the standpoint that would cite any reason why that would be the case.
Yeah, I mean, you got to go out and have a monster year. Your team's got to win a lot of games, make it to the postseason. If you're going to be that guy in the run for the Heisman, think about the guys who end up getting to New York. Most of them, their team has a great year. Now, last year, the situation was you had Mayfield, team was having a great year. He had a tremendous year. Mm-hmm. But you had the defending Heisman Trophy winner whose team was not having a great year, but he was still having a pretty good individual year. And he got invited back to New York. But typically your team has got to be doing really well, and you've got to be having a monster year to get that invite and have a shot.
Here's the problem. One of the problems is this. If Bentley is having a great year, and on the other side, he stays healthy, that means Debo is having a great year. Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, and if Debo takes a couple of kickoffs back, and I would say he's not going to do that because you'd be an idiot to kick it to him, they would break up Heisman votes on the same team.
Sure. Well, it's not impossible to come from out of nowhere.
Right. It's done all the time.
It's done all the time now. And I think too much of the early talk when it comes to the Heisman, a lot of that will flame out, not only by the time the season starts, but by the middle of the season, because new candidates start to emerge.
Right.
But I think so much of what needs to happen for South Carolina in 2018, is that they need to get to a point like where we thought they were going into 2017. We thought that South Carolina's offense was going to be explosive, and the exact opposite was the case. Not only were they not explosive, but their defense was a lot further along than we thought they were. And it won them some games. It won them games. Not only did we didn't think that they could win, but in ways we didn't think that they could win them. So right now, South Carolina's biggest task come springtime and come the fall is they need to at least show the propensity for that explosiveness that we thought that they could show. They need to be able to protect Jake Bentley. They need to stay healthy at the skill positions, and they have to move the football in a way that we thought they were going to in 2017.
Well, here's the point. That's why I say you have to ask the right questions. Is it because they sputtered because of play calling, or it was a matter of just health? Suppose that Rico Dowdle and Debo Samuel did not get hurt. Maybe they go 10, maybe they go 11 and 1. Who knows? Because that Texas A&M game, even with the offensive line banged up, was there for the taking.
Mm-hmm.
But they couldn't get it done, and a lot of that was because the offensive line was in disarray in that particular ball game. And the one bugaboo corn that they have to break is this hex that Kentucky has on.
The Kentucky and A&M thing, those are the two games. If you look at those two, those are the ones that if you're a South Carolina fan, that sticks in your craw. To use a phrase you used off the air with me earlier today. I know the people will get mad and angry as hell about them losing to Clemson. I know that I say this to somebody who is coming in this from 30,000 feet. You can't worry about Clemson. You got to worry about your conference. You got to worry about what you can do inside the SEC, especially inside the East, and you have to fix the problems that bugged you in those two games that were winnable games that you should have won.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that, of course, I was one who thought they would make the 30-point per game plateau last season with the offensive personnel that they had. Losing Debo was certainly a crushing blow, but don't forget they also lost Casey Crosby. They also lost Rico Dowdle for a while. They had some significant injuries that set the offense back.
3 offensive linemen go down at any one time as well.
Yeah, so they had a lot of injuries that hampered them in their development, and we'll see what the new brain trust can do, led by Brian McClendon. It's going to be his offense. He's going to have Dan Warner to advise him, a guy that has been around the block, a guy that knows how to build an offense, how to develop quarterbacks in a big way. What he showed at Ole Miss, and certainly he picked up some things when he was at Alabama. So those two working together will try to spearhead this offense to greatness. And if they can get the offense out of neutral, which is kind of where it's been, it's just kind of been spinning its wheels for the most part. And I got to be honest with you, for much of the Michigan game and the bowl game, wasn't all that impressed. And then they finally got it going into the fourth quarter, and they looked good. They made some big plays. They had some down-the-field throws. Receivers made some nice catches, and I thought Bentley put the ball where it needed to be. If they can do that, getting out of the gates, and then especially when they get to week 2 and Georgia comes to Columbia and say they can spring an upset, and Bentley's looking good, now you're talking about the possibility of running up some big numbers. Then you're talking about maybe getting off to a 6 or 7 win start. He's having that kind of year who can be mentioned in the Heisman category.
Well, who was the one team that we looked at in the East that you compared South Carolina at least most similarly to? I'm asking you guys.
You mean last year?
At least going into last year.
Going into last year, who do we compare them to in terms of what?
In terms of team makeup, as far as the way that they look. I thought that going into last year, that especially because that game was so early in the season, that South Carolina and Missouri had very similar teams coming into those games. South Carolina did not have the offense that Missouri had in their final 6 games of the season, but I think you take a lot of the blueprints of that offense and you can apply them to South Carolina. Use the tempo, use the stretching down the field with guys like Debo Samuel and Shi Smith and Trey Smith, and use the zone running scheme in order to stretch guys to the boundary and take people out of the middle, because so much of what plagued South Carolina last year was the ability to get pressure through the middle.
USC's cooled off a little bit, now trailing 26-23, 8:49 to go in the first half in Arkansas. Back in a moment.